Hey everyone, Maitreya Wolf here with the Art of Soulful Living vlog. Thanks for joining me today. It's always sweet to have your company, and I pray that this brings something of value to your heart and your soul and your mind and your consciousness today and all days. We're going to get into something that I really deeply value today, and that is the myth of the descent of Ishtar. And we're going to get into this story as a way to explore our collective descent towards soul and this moment of initiation that we are finding ourselves in as a planet and a species right now. So we're going to start with that myth, and then we are going to explore it a little bit afterwards. Thanks again for joining me, and here it is. Enjoy. The Descent of Ishtar, one of the original creation stories of Sumer. Though in Sumer, this goddess's name was Inanna. She became Ishtar when Sumer became Babylon. And I use the name Ishtar because I wore the name Ishtar for many years, and this story was the story I was living at the time. So Ishtar is the queen of heaven and earth, and everything is good. She's the queen of heaven and earth. Everything is golden. All of life is a praising of her magnificence. The sun shines in her honor. The animals sing in her honor. The plants flower in her honor. Everything is good. And by her side is her beloved Tammuz, who is the god of the harvest. And together they are the fertility of the world. And they are, as Martin Shaw likes to say, they are rivers to their people. So everything is good, everything is beautiful. But Ishtar starts to feel something. She starts to feel like there's something missing, like there's more that she needs to experience or explore in the world. And she gets a really clear understanding that it's time for her to meet her sister, Ereshkigal, who is the queen of hell, the underworld. So Ishtar decides to set out for a journey to the underworld. She's learned that Ereshkigal's consort, Gugalana, has recently passed, and that there will be a funeral for Gugalana, and she decides that I will go and I will stand by my sister's side at her funeral. Even though, mind you, they've never met. They've never met. They were brought into creation in their respective realms, heaven and hell. the above world, the world of daylight and sunlight, and the underworld, the world of the night. They were brought into creation at the same time as those realms, and they actually, though they touch, they've never met. But Ishtar decides to go. And so she tells Tammuz, she says, watch over the world for me. I'm going on a journey to see my sister. And Tammuz, I will watch over the world for you. Blessings on your journey. And she goes to Ninshibur, her maidservant. It says, Ninshibur, I am going to see Ereshkigal in the underworld. I will return in 3 days' time. Please tend the house for me while I'm away. Ninshibur freaks out. Ninshibur's like, are you crazy? You're going to go do what? You can't go there. You're not dead. Only the dead go there. You're not even mortal. You can't even die. Like, you can't go to see Ereshkigal. Nobody ever comes back from there. And Ishtar, I understand. I understand your concern, but it has to be done, so I'm going. Take this drum And if I don't return in 3 days, bang the drum and tell Tammuz to come and find me. And if for some reason he can't, go and see Enki and Enlil, our great fathers, and tell them to come find me. I haven't told them that I'm going, but I'm sure nothing will go wrong. I'm only going to the underworld. What could possibly go wrong? Yeah. So she sets out. And in the tablets it says she calls herself back from her palace, from her people, from her temples, from her land. So she gathers herself together. She withdraws from the world of her home. She withdraws herself into herself, and she bedecks herself in her holy regalia, which is her crown, her earrings, her necklace, her bracelets, her sandals, her belt, and her gown. She bedecks herself in her regalia. She withdraws herself from the land, the people, the temples, the cities, and she sets out for this journey. And she journeys to the gates of the underworld, and she gets there, and the gatekeeper is there, and the gatekeeper says, "What are you doing here?" And she says, "I've come to see my sister." And the gatekeeper laughs. And he says, "You can't come in here. You're not mortal, let alone dead, and only the dead come here." And Ishtar says, "I understand, but I've come to see Ereshkigal. I must see my sister." And the gatekeeper, Neti, says, "I can't permit that. Only the dead pass through these gates, and you're not dead. Go home." And Ishtar says, "Well, just tell Ereshkigal I'm here and ask her if I can come. I'd like to stand by her side at the funeral of Gugalana." And Neti cocks an eyebrow and is like, "Okay, hold on." And goes down to Ereshkigal, who's waiting past the 7 gates in her throne room, and says, "Ereshkigal, Ishtar is here and she'd like to come see you." And Ereshkigal just goes, "What?" And Neti says, yeah, that's what I said too. "Ishtar, your sister, the Queen of Heaven, she's here and she wants to come see you." And Ereshkigal's like, "That's outrageous. What for?" And Neti says, "Well, she'd like to stand by your side at the funeral of Gugalana." And Ereshkigal says, "Really? Okay. Well, Neti let her in, but she has to pass through the 7 gates on her way. She has to make it here." And Neti says, "Yes, ma'am." Goes back to the gate where Ishtar is waiting and spreads the gate open and beckons her inside. And Ishtar steps over the threshold into the underworld. And as she steps through, Neti removes the crown from her head. And she turns around. She's shocked. She turns around and looks at him. She's going to protest. But she recognizes from the look on his face, "You are not queen here. This is how it works here." And she takes the gulp. Okay. And he says, "Pass on through the rest of the 6 gates, and then you'll get to Ereshkigal's throne. She's waiting for you." And so Ishtar goes forward, passes through the next gate. Her earrings are removed. The next gate, her necklace is removed. The next gate, her bracelets. The next, her sandals. The next, her belt. And finally, her gown. And so she enters into Ereshkigal's throne room naked, and Ereshkigal beckons her to kneel before her and says, "Only what are you doing here?" And Ishtar says, "I've come to stand by your side in the funeral of Gugalana. I want to know you, sister." And Ereshkigal just laughs. She's just like, "We've been here for eternity, and now all of a sudden my lover dies and you want to support me? You've never been here before. What do you really want?" And Ishtar says, "I want to I want to know you, sister. I want to stand by your side. And Ereshkigal laughs again and just says, well, you want to know me? Know me you shall. And she kills her. She kills Ishtar. She annihilates her and hangs her on a hook on the wall like a trophy. And at that moment, topside, everything begins to die. And the world begins to wither and collapse and die. And this incredible grief comes through the world because the great mother of life has died. And even though nobody knows what happened, everybody knows that something happened. Everything knows that something happened. The birds stop singing. The flowers start to wither. The water starts to dry up. The very mountains seem to slump in grief towards the ground. And so Ninshubur picks up the drum and starts banging on it and goes to Tammuz and says to Tammuz, Tammuz, something's happened. Ishtar went to see Ereshkigal in the underworld. You know this. And something's happened. She's not coming back. And now the world is dying. We need to go rescue her. And Tammuz says, what am I supposed to do? I have to take care of the world that she abandoned. I'm busy. Everything's dying now. I have to tend. I have to tend to the world that she's abandoned. If something's happened to her, that's not my problem. I can't help. She's on her own. She decided. She's on her own. And Ninshubur wails in grief and despair and goes to see Enlil, one of the great fathers of creation, and says to Enlil, bursts into Enlil's house like breathless and desperate, and says to Enlil, Enlil, Ishtar went to the underworld to see Ereshkigal, and something happened. Everything's dying. She didn't come back. It's been 3 days, and something's wrong, and we have to go get her. And Enlil is just enraged. He's just immediately enraged. He's like, she did what? She went where to do what? Utter foolishness, utter stupidity, utter recklessness. I will not save her. She chose her fate, and that is her responsibility. I will not save her. And Ninshubur wails and runs from the house and goes to the house of Enki and sets up the lament. Enki, something's wrong. Ishtar went to see Ereshkigal, and it's been 3 days and she hasn't returned, and everything's dying, and Tammuz won't help, and Enlil won't help, and we need to go get her back because everything's dying, and the world is going to collapse and wither and dissolve and disappear if we don't restore her to the queen, to the throne of heaven. We've got to save her. And Enki's just like, she did what? Oh. Wow. Ooh, that was quite bold. Dangerous. I wish she had told us first, but okay. Calm down. Ninshubur, calm down. Yes, we'll go get her. We'll go get her. Of course, we need her. Everything's dying. We can't have that. It's not right. It's not the cycle. We'll go get her. So Enki, of course, being one of the great fathers of creation, he can pass into the underworld. He's Ereshkigal and Ishtar's father. It's okay. So he goes to Ereshkigal with Ninshubur to petition for Ishtar's release. And Ereshkigal is like, we told her that only the dead come here. And you have to be dead to come here. And she wanted to go, so she's dead now. See? There she is. She looks good, doesn't she? Death suits her. And Enki is, very respectful of Ereshkigal and says, great queen of the underworld, great queen of the death, great queen of this part of the cycles of the life of creation. I understand. I understand your actions. I understand your response. I understand how you feel. I understand all of it. And the fact remains that we cannot have Ishtar dead. She is the queen of heaven and earth is dying, and the heavens are collapsing, and she must be restored to her place. And Ereshkigal is not particularly attached, and death is generous. Death is generous. So Ereshkigal says, fine, she can go. I don't care. But there has been a death. So there will be an empty space once she goes, and somebody must return to take her place. And since she's not ever going to die, that's fine. But that space exists now, and it must be filled. So she can go if she can get back through the gates on her own. You cannot help her, because she chose to come here. She has to earn her way back out. That's unconditional. And 2 of my people will go with her. And when she finds whoever she chooses to send back in her place, they will escort that person here. These are my conditions. And Enki says, agreed. Good conditions. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Great, generous, holy Ereshkigal. Thank you. And Ereshkigal says, yeah, sure. Get out of my house. And she restores Ishtar to life. And says, nice to meet you, sister. You are welcome to go. You will have to get back through the gates on your own. And if you want your regalia back on the way, you will have to pass a test at each gate. Ishtar bows down to her sister and says, thank you. Thank you for letting me know you. I am more complete because of it. And in that moment, they dissolve the opposition between them, and they become a continuum of experience. They bond in that moment. And Ereshkigal says, thank you for coming. Blessings on your journey. Go home. So Ishtar makes the journey back through the gates. She earns back her sandals, her belt, her gown, her bracelets, her necklace, her earrings, and finally her crown. And she emerges into the world. And as soon as she emerges, the sun becomes bright again. The flowers lift up in their fullness again. The birds send up a song. The water flows full as she comes back. And as she comes back, she sends herself back into the land. She sends herself back into her temples. And she sends herself finally back into her palace. But as she goes in, Tammuz is there. And Tammuz is like, oh, now you're back. And now you want the throne back, I'm sure. But who was here while you went on your vacation? While you went on your adventure to find yourself? Who was here? I was. Who tended the world while it died and withered from your withdrawal? You selfishly withdrew from the world, and I had to take care of it all. And now you're back, and you want your throne back? Well, I don't think you deserve it anymore. I think you've abdicated your right to the throne, and I think I am king in my own right now. And Ishtar says, I see. You did. You took care of things while I went away, and I appreciate that dearly. But I am the queen of heaven and earth, and this is my throne. And I am coming home as a whole being. So, to the minions who had escorted her, accompanied her from the underworld, she says, you can take him down to Ereshkigal. And they swarm out from beside her and grab Tammuz and take him down to Ereshkigal in Ishtar's place. And Ishtar reclaims her throne. The end. So, what is this story talking about? What does this story mean? And what has this story given rise to in the course of the world and our lives, in the course of the thousands of years that it has informed the development of the human endeavor? This story is talking about the descent into soul. And I am, of course, discussing it from my own personal perspective because so story time briefly, I lived in Seattle a number of years ago, like 12 or some odd years ago. I lived in Seattle for 5 years, beginning when I was 24. And in the course of that time, I underwent a protracted drama that culminated in a concise trauma that was a spiritual death for me. And shortly after that, I was sitting with somebody that I had just met, and we were talking, and he said to me after a little while, "What's your name?" And I said, "Ishtar," out of the blue. I said, "Ishtar." And he said, "What was it again?" And I said, "Ishtar." And he's like, "Really? That's an unusual name. Is that your given name?" And I said, "Well, it's given." He said, "Who is it? What is it? Where's it from?" I said, "It's the name of a goddess." And he said, "Oh, wow, that's great. I never heard that before, blah, 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 blah." And he carried on, we carried on with our conversation, whatever. I didn't even know what Ishtar was at that moment, other than that she was a goddess. And so I had to go home and research it. And when I began to research it, it started to sink in at a different level. And I ended up wearing that name and walking with that story for the next 5 years. And I would say that story is the central mythology of my own experience. And so my understanding of it is very, very personal. I don't look at it through the historical lens of like what was Sumer about, I don't look at it through the archetypal lens of like the Jungian psychoanalyst, blah, 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 blah. I look at it through the lens of, what is my experience of this story. And that's the generosity of stories. When we bring story and mythology into our lives, this is the generosity of stories, is that they are here to help us contextualize our soul's experiences in the phenomenon of embodied life. And so this is a story of descent into soul. Ishtar being the queen of heaven, this is a spiritual thing. And the detail that Ishtar and Ereshkigal have never met because they came into existence simultaneously in the course of creating manifest experience. They came into existence simultaneously when the realm of the underworld and the realm of the upper world were manifested. These queens, these sovereigns, manifested alongside of them, and they are embodiments of the principles and the subtle and fundamental energetics of these places. And that they've never met is a salient point, because they are polarized at the beginning. In the Sumerian myth, it talks about, in the tablets, it talks about that Ereshkigal is violently resentful of Ishtar. And Ishtar is oblivious. Essentially, like, her shit's so sweet, she's like, I don't care. And Ereshkigal's over here, like, she's living in the underworld. She's in the hard territory. And she resents Ishtar. So they have this polarization until they meet, and then they become a spectrum of experience. This is something that's really important in all my teaching and in the course of my own life, is what is the spectrum of experience that I'm sitting inside of? Because in the field of the binary experience, the field of the binary code, which is very much what, manifest existence is based on, the binary code principle. When I'm sitting in one place, if I'm here being Ishtar, at this point in my life, I know that it's important for me to recognize who is my Ereshkigal right now. Or if I'm here as Ereshkigal in any given moment, it's important for me to identify who is my Ishtar right now, so that I can understand the spectrum that I'm operating inside of, or the spectrum that I'm navigating in any given experience or moment or journey. So that's a salient point. And then there's the piece that she dresses in her regalia, which is all representative of different elements of the embodied self. The crown is the consciousness. The earrings are the hearing. In the tablets it says she turns her ear to the great below. She turns her ear to the great below. So the crown represents like cosmic connection. The earrings represent listening, soul listening, attention, the attention we pay to life, or the attention that exists within us that can't be paid to the life around us. The necklace represents the throat, the power of communication, how we convey ourselves as beings into the world, how we speak the world into existence with the power of our voice. Because the voice is utterly singular to any given person. Right? This voice that I have, that I love so much, that I'm so blessed, sings so beautifully. This voice is unique to this vessel. And once this vessel expires, that's it. That voice is gone. So this is the voice. The necklace is the voice. The necklace is the speaking the world into being. It's the expression of self at the deepest soul level. The bracelets represent the hands, how we touch the world, how we take the medicine within us and apply it manipulatively, which is not a fundamentally negative word. Manipulate just means touch with the hands, move with the hands, manage with the hands. So how we touch the world. The sandals represent where we stand, our stance, our step, our foundation. The belt represents our center. In a woman in particular, it represents the womb, the creative center, that place within the body that can receive the fertilized egg and grow a new life. The place within us that holds the pregnancy. And that pregnancy can be with, literally with a new animal. Whether you're human or not, it's an animal. Whatever kind of meat suit you got on, it's an animal. So and if there's a woman, you're going to grow an animal in there maybe someday. And if it's not an actual animal you're making, then it's the gifts, the offerings that you're bringing to life, that you're birthing through the phenomenon of your life. And then the dress is the foundation of the costume of the self. You know, how we dress, the clothes we wear is like a signal that we send out into the world. And it's also a containment system. We contain ourselves in our clothes. So all of these things, and there's so much more. I mean, it relates to what in the Vedic system is called the chakras, which relate to, what is that word? Clusters of nerve clusters that emerge from the spinal column that activate different parts of the body, different groups of organs and different biochemical processes and all these other things. I can't for the life of me remember the name of like the clusters of nerves, but that's what the chakras relate to, is these nerve clusters in the body that emerge from the spinal column. So all of the regalia, Ishtar's regalia, relates to all of that. It relates to the 7 layers of the body, the 7 layers of the manifest self, from the gross meat layer to the lightest etheric layer. You know, there's an endless array of correlations. So these 7 elements of regalia and the 7 gates represent these elements of the phenomenological self and more. But that's as far as we'll go, because we can unpack that for days. So Ishtar gets dressed in her regalia. She gets dressed in her regalia, and she withdraws herself from the lands, the temples, the cities, and her own palace. So she draws herself in. She gathers her power. She gathers all her power. She draws her energy all the way in from everything. She gets dressed in all her gear, and she sets out for the gates. And as soon as she gets to the gates, she meets resistance. You can't pass. You can't come here. And on the journey into awakening, we are going to meet so much resistance. We are going to meet so much resistance. There are tests. There are tasks. There are challenges. There are gauntlets. There is pain in the journey of awakening, because Ishtar's power, when she begins, is arbitrary. She was endowed with it. It's not something that she's earned, and it's not something that she fully understands. And when it says in the tablets, she turns her ears to the great below, you know, in the story, when I'm saying like, she's just got a feeling that there's more, that there's something that she's missing and that she has to go find it. This is the deep soul self's desire to be actualized as a full being. So she's over here as the Queen of Heaven, and before she meets Ereshkigal, her power is arbitrary. She's just endowed with it. She hasn't earned it, and she doesn't actually understand it. So she can't fully embody it with the real deep roots of true wisdom. So she gathers herself all in, and she sets off to go see Ereshkigal. And as she goes towards Ereshkigal, she gets stripped of all of the endowed power that she didn't earn. She gets stripped down. So that when she finally arrives before Ereshkigal, she has nothing to hide behind. She has nothing to hide behind. And she is just there at the most naked, vulnerable essence of her being. And Ereshkigal wipes her out. And then, this whole piece of Ninshibur, her servant, going and petitioning these three men to go and help her, and her husband saying no, and her one father saying no, and her third father saying yes. This has to do with the phenomenon that we have a place in the story of life. If we exist, we have a place in the story of life. And even if we take ourselves out of the equation, some part of the story of life itself knows that we belong in the story, and so will open the pathway for us to find our way back. Because in descent, if you stay awake and you stay alive and you stay present in the course of descent, and you meet it and treat it as an initiatory process, then when you get to that bottom, there is a turning towards an empowering path. So bringing Ishtar back to life, the whole thing, like Ereshkigal's not attached. She's not like, she's not gonna make Ishtar stay. She's not gonna say, fuck the world, it has to die. She came, whatever. Ereshkigal's, she knows the balance. Like, she is the queen of the underworld. She knows the balance. She knows the story. She knows the score. She knows what time it is. And she's made her point. She's expressed her power. She has expressed her sovereignty over her own realm. She has expressed her boundaries. And then she says, sure, she can go. It's fine. But she has to earn back her power. And that is an incredible generosity on Ereshkigal's part. Because Ishtar has just gone through the annihilation, the severance and annihilation aspect of the initiatory journey. Now she has to come back through the return, and she earns her power back at each gate where she gains back some element of her regalia. She is earning the power that she was originally endowed with on her own. She is earning her shoes. She is earning her stance in the world. She is earning her dress. She is earning her expression in the world, her embodiment. She is earning her belt. She is earning her creativity. She is earning her bracelet. She is earning the power of her ability to touch. She is earning her necklace. She's earning the power of her voice. She's earning her earrings. She's earning the power of her perception. And she earns her crown. She is earning the power of her connection with the cosmos, with the source. So that's an incredible generosity on Ereshkigal's part. She doesn't just say, okay, she can go, and dress her back up and send her out. She says, you can go, but you have to earn back your regalia. And there's not an option for Ishtar to go back without it. She has to go back with the regalia. Or else she's not complete. She's not the queen. She's not the queen of heaven and earth. She's not the great mother anymore. She has to earn back the regalia. She has to earn her embodiment, her stance, her voice, her powers. She has to earn those back. And then when she emerges and life comes back to life, then she is able to go into her throne room and say, Tammuz is going to go now. And I interpret this as a generosity to Tammuz, because Tammuz's arrogance is like, no, you gave up the power. I'm going to keep the power now. Fuck you, this is my throne now. And Ishtar's like, no, you're going to die. You go through this journey. And that sends Tammuz on that same initiatory journey towards his own fullness. But since he isn't going with the intent to become more whole, he's going to his end, and then he's going to have to start back again on his journey, on his cycle. But it also has to do with Ishtar arriving back into her throne as a whole being. She doesn't need someone else to fulfill her, or to fulfill the responsibilities of her queendom. She is sovereign. At this point, she is full being. She is in her power because she has met death. She has traveled the entire spectrum of the possibilities of her own experience. And she has voluntarily abdicated false power for wisdom, and then earned back the power in an authentic and integrated way so that she becomes whole. It's a profound story of reclamation, and it is a profound story for the dissolving that we are in right now. Because we as a society, in North America in particular, we as a society, and by extension, we as a global society, are dissolving. We have entered the underworld, and we are being stripped of our illusions of power. We are being stripped. And if we can relate to that as an initiatory journey, then we can harvest the wisdom and the power that the pain and the discomfort and the difficulty of this experience will bring forward and continue to bring forward in our lives. Engaging with something initiatorily has everything to do with the quality of our attention. The quality of our attention. You know, when I entered into the journey of Ishtar, I was a child, I was entering into my Saturn return. It was my Saturn return, and I got fucking slammed for years. It was so hard for so long. The whole lead up to the trauma was so hard for so long. The whole journey through the underworld after the trauma was so hard for so long. I am still coming out of the underworld. I am still integrating my sovereignty. This is not an easy journey. It has not been an easy journey for me. But this journey has transformed me. And in the beginning, I had no idea what was happening. The whole fact that Ishtar arose as like a spontaneous, I told someone that was my name, then I was like, what the fuck? And it took me a while, too, to find that myth. I didn't find that myth for a long time. In Wikipedia, it says, or it did back then, I don't know what it says now, but in Wikipedia, that fucking shit show, in Wikipedia it says, like, Ishtar's the patron saint of prostitutes. Which I didn't know until my mom called me. It was like, why did you name yourself up to the patron saint of prostitutes? I was like, what the fuck have you been reading? She's like, Wikipedia! And I went and I looked it up, and I'm like, Ishtar's not a saint, for one thing. She's a goddess. And this has to do with, temple priestesses, sexual temple priestesses in the past. Like, this is way more complex. This is obviously some old white man's interpretation of this myth, and it's fucking garbage. Get rid of it. but it took me a long time to actually access what this story is. And then I didn't understand it until I was living my way into understanding it. And so this story that exists in our collective body, mythology is like part of the dreaming of the world and the cosmos. Mythology is part of the dreaming of the world and the cosmos, and this dream surged forth into my life to help me get through the most difficult material I had ever dealt with. And it's still there to help me get through. And I'm still learning. I'm still a disciple of this story. And like I said, when I began, I had no idea what was going on. And collectively, we don't understand that we are in the descent towards soul right now. We are in the descent towards soul. We have been living such utterly vacuous insanity on the biggest possible level. Like, so much good stuff happening in so many places, so many good people doing so many things. But at the grandest level, like the entire thrust of civilization at this point, buildings and cars and governments and presidents and all this stuff, like oil and money and industrialized agriculture and industrialized animal farming, and like, this is a bad situation. This is a bad situation. We have deviated from life so radically. But now we're in the descent towards soul. We deviated so far from soul in our pursuit of mind and spirit. But we have reached the outer edge of that bungee cord, as it were. Like, we've reached the outer limits of that cord, and we are being pulled back towards soul, which is down and in. Soul goes down and in. Soul goes towards the underworld. Because you have to see and integrate the whole of your being, the whole of the truth of your being, to become a naturally sovereign being. You have to, on a personal level, you have to meet your pain body. You have to meet your grief. You have to meet the violence in your own soul. You have to meet the thief, the liar, the cheat, all these different elements of your own soul. You have to meet them and know them and integrate them to actually be a life-giving element of the life of the world. And that's what we're doing now as a collective. We are in the descent towards soul. And soul has gravity. Spirit has levity. And as a society, we love levity. We are attached to levity. We are identified to levity. We want the bright, the upward, the fun, the light, and all those things are beautiful. But if those things are pursued as a way to abandon and avoid the gravity and the depth of soul, then we become neurotic and dissociated and ultimately insane, which is what's happened. We've become very insane. And even the best among us are trying to recalibrate ourselves inside of this fundamental insanity in a way that will work, without saying, like, no, the structure itself is life-denying and needs to be transformed from the roots, from the foundation up. And I don't know how that will look, but I know that it's happening. I know it's happening. So, the descent to soul. We are in the descent to soul. So as we progress, let's just hold this in mind, that we are in the descent towards soul. And that this journey is a journey of recalibrating us from arbitrary, assumed power to an actual, deep, and truthful understanding of our own power and who we are as individuals in relation, as members of the family of the world, and as members of the family of the cosmos. Remember that for this to be an initiation and not a devastation or a trauma depends on our relationship with the process, how we show up. And really, for it to be an initiation, all we have to do is show up with humility, with curiosity, with strength, really standing up tall in relation to whatever gets handed to us, whatever gets shown to us, whatever we see in ourselves or the world around us. Just standing up tall and looking it in the eye without flinching, without blinking, without backing down, without collapsing. It just has to do with showing up, really. And if you need or want help with your particular piece, I'm here to help, because I have been through this descent before. I haven't been through it at this level of magnitude. I've been through it in myself. But I know how to navigate descent in a way that harvests the wisdom and cultivates the soul. Because that's the deepest invitation we are sitting inside of right now. We are sitting inside of the invitation to cultivate our souls. Because imagine this. Birds flying by outside the window, very sweet. Imagine this. This whole thing. When people in spiritual circles or settings or whatever, when they say life is an illusion, don't get confused. That is a really easy to misinterpret thing. What I hear when I hear that, and what I have come to understand that sentiment to mean, is that the body of the self and all of the circumstances that we exist inside of in their manifest expressions, like society based on earth devastating extractivism industries and the enslavement of the human population to different degrees across the board, and the enslavement of the world and the rest of the creatures here across the board. When we look at the manifestations of these energies, what we're looking at is the relationship between energetic principles. But the vessels, the actual specific vessels, the actual specific structures, those are temporal and fleeting and phenomenological. It's not ultimate. It's real, it exists, it's an experience we're sitting inside of, but it's not ultimate. It's a way for this energy to dance and relate and move. It's a way that these energetic processes happen. So don't get caught up on the surface of it. Don't get caught up on the identity. Me, Ishtar, Maitreya, feels this way about you, Jackson, you, Shirley. we have this thing going on, this particular story going on. Like, don't get caught up in it on that level. Say, understand it at a more essential level. Understand it at a more essential level. What are the energetic processes playing out here? And how do I find my way to a deeper richness? How do I find my way to a deeper fullness? How do I find my way into a deeper affirmation of life inside of this play? Leela, as they say in the Vedic thought streams, the Leela, Leela, the play of life. How do I find my way to a deeper cultivation of soul through the theater of this experience? Don't get caught up on the details. Don't get caught up on the personalities. Don't get hung up on Democrat and Republican, black and white, male and female. Don't get caught up on that shit. Understand the energies that are at play and navigate those with the eye always towards deepening into soul. Because that is what makes this the profound difficulty of this time. That's what makes this an initiation and not a trauma. I pray that brings something of beauty and value into your day, in your heart, in your mind, in your life. And I deeply, deeply appreciate that you have taken the time to listen to this if you've gotten this far. My name is Maitreya Wolf. I do counseling and healing and teaching and music. So if you're interested in any of the things I do, or if you need help navigating your part of the descent, reach out to me. I'm available to help, and I would love to. So many blessings to you, and so many blessings to Mama Ishtar for your story. So many blessings to that story. We'll get through this. We'll be all right. Many blessings to you, friends.